platform and I made a boo-boo. I said we were going to talk to Roger McClay. That was his dad. We're actually joined now by the Minister of Trade, Todd McClay. Todd, how are you?
Hey, really good. Great to be on. Thanks so much. Look, that's a compliment, calling me after my dad.
Yeah. He was a good bloke. He truly was. Look, Todd, I was looking at a number of stories you've been involved in, and any one of them would have been worthy of interviewing you. So, look, we got a little bit to work through. I actually, strangely enough, want to start with a very, very local issue in Rotorua, because I think it affects, and the issues that have been highlighted in Rotorua are affecting many towns and cities around the country, and that of a kind of ghettoisation caused by emergency social accommodation, particularly in motels. There's been some progress in that regard lately down in Fenton Street in Rotorua.
Yeah, Sean, that's right. So, look, hey, thanks so much for having me on. We campaigned very clearly last year on ending the use of homeless motels in Rotorua within 2 years, around the rest of the country within 3 years. And it's really straightforward. Look, you don't want people on the streets. Mums with kids have to have accommodation, but a motel room is not a place to dump kids and leave there in the long term. And that's just what Labor was doing at an exorbitant cost. So we've started working through that process in Rotorua. The number of contracted emergency hotels last year was 13. It's been reduced to 10, and we're going to get stop using another 4 during the rest of this year. And the second thing that's happened, which I think is most important, is the ministry has been told they're no longer allowed to move people to Rotorua to put in motels. And the reason for this is you've got to deal with the challenge of the issue where it exists, where the people are, where they've got the support base, not ship them all over the country, and that really was happening. I mean, final point is, at its peak under the Labor government, there were 87 motels being used, more than 2,000 people in them, and it's just a tragedy for the city, and quite honestly, a tragedy for the people they were dumping.
Because you really did become Rotorua was the poster city, not for tourism, which hitherto it has been, but for homelessness and for the problems caused by homelessness.
Yeah, and that's exactly right. It's had a big impact upon our reputation. And the announcement over the weekend of another 4 motels not being used, all on Fenton Street, is, really the claim of we're taking Fenton Street back. But I want to be really, really careful. Many of the people in these motels are in very desperate situations. They deserve homes. The last government promised that to them, didn't deliver. You can't just leave them in the motels. It's not good for anybody. And so, we're stepping up in Rotorua so that the state is still building houses, but we're creating really, really good contracts and partnerships with the private sector and NGOs and other groups who also should be involved in housing, because, where Labor thought the government was a solution to every single problem, they often were the problem themselves.
Right. Okay. Tick, electorate stuff done. Rotorua stuff done. You've been at Field Days. You were at Field Days yesterday, their opening day. And I began the show this morning by saying I think one of, if not the most significant policy decision made by this new coalition government has been to finally end the madness of including agriculture in the admission trading scheme. You don't yet have the courage to actually scrap the admissions trading scheme and sign up to the Paris Accord, but I'm sure you'll get there eventually. What was the mood at Field Days yesterday in relation to that ETS decision?
Yeah, look, I've had a lot of farmers coming up to me. Less of the ETS, because although Labor put them in, it hadn't taken effect until beginning of next year. But farmers knew it was coming, and just a cost was going to be imposed on them, where it's a little bit like the ute tax. There's nothing that they can do to reduce emissions, methane from cows as an example, other than destock and produce less. And so it's just one more cost for them. But what they have recognised is that we've got rid of He Waka Ekanoa, which was this great big gamble that the last government came up with that actually, took 2 or 3 years of the primary sector's effort, and then Labor walked away from it. And so, but I tell you, the feeling at Field Days is optimistic amongst farmers. I put that down more to, across the board, the signals we've been sending and changes we're starting to work through to relieve the regulatory burden, the red tape and the cost. and take some of these silly rules away and say, well, we do need rules around water quality, but we want effective ones that focus on an outcome, don't just penalise and don't just beat rural New Zealand up. And so there starts to be optimism that the wave of rules and regulations, the war against farmers has ended, and that we are constructively, step by step, going to sort out our most productive sector, agriculture.
Todd, it always strikes me about the farming community, and particularly those who would criticise them and say they're exploiting, they are the people most invested in an environment that works, in ecosystems that works. Their very livelihood, intergenerational livelihood, is based on being good custodians of the land they occupy, right?
That is my experience, and you are absolutely right. I was on another show yesterday, and the interviewer was saying, well, you've taken away the one last stick that Labor had to beat farmers into doing something. And I said, but that's the problem. Labor thought they had to beat them with a stick. I don't agree. So if you think about one of the changes we've made around both stock exclusion from waterways and winter grazing. So the rules are very, very clear around winter grazing, and you're also not allowed stock in waterways, right? But we trust farmers to know how to do that and how to do it best, and to work with their councils to come up with solutions, right? You don't need great big fences everywhere. In fact, a few years ago, one council was working out how many wires you needed on the fence to keep stock out of waterways. You end up like a wall like Donald Trump had, which also didn't work, right? Yeah. Actually, the rule says you're not allowed animals in the waterways. The farmers will work out how best to do it. If they don't, then they're in trouble. And so the point of this is actually, yes, they do know the most about their land. They care about the environment. They're up for the challenge. They just want a government that will work with them and good, sensible rules, not punitive ones that cost them a huge amount.
Yeah, I hear. Okay, well, no matter how good our agricultural sector is, no good making, great dairy products, great crops, great food, unless we can sell them somewhere. And that's where your big job comes in as the Minister of Trade. I know I presume you're meeting with the Chinese delegation that's coming here this week, or today, in fact, the Chinese Premier. They're our biggest trading partner. But also on the cards is an expansion and a new trade deal with India. Can you tell us how potentially important that deal is?
Yeah, look, it's really, really important. You're right. I will be with Chinese Premier and our Prime Minister